Welcome to our knowledgeable investors and agents nationwide. Today is Thursday, May 19th, 2022, and this is All the Leads Mastermind podcast number 378. And I will throw it over to Bruce. Bruce, how's it going?
Oh man, we got to work on the transition.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Well, nobody else raised their hand, so you're automatically.
we got to work on the transition.
You're our default person, Bruce. Take it away.
Right. Thanks everyone for joining this week. It's been a wild week, a couple of weeks at All the Leads. We've had some good things, had a lot of interest in the divorce leads that we rolled out in select counties last week. So if you're not in one of those counties, be on the lookout at some point. Don't call us immediately and say, where are the divorce leads for my county? We're rolling them out slowly, making sure that we have everything accurate for you guys so that you can get the best quality leads and the best training available when it's available nationwide. So we're in the middle of a good month of training. We're repackaging some different training tools. I'm building out. For those of you that have been to the foundations classes, I am working very hard at building out the dialogue day to turn that into a 2 to 3 day specific kind of what to say, how to say it class that sits separately outside of foundations. So those of you that really want to work on the craft of being on the phone and getting listing appointments when you go, or signing up the client when you go and make your offer, be on the lookout for that. We're probably going to push that out at the end of June, potentially beginning of July. So just be watching out for that. But it's been a good week. I've had a lot of people that have given us some success stories with their probate and pre-probate campaigns. Chuck has had some good coaching calls. So before we dig into your questions, and please guys, if you have not been here, if you do have a question, you can pop your hand up using the reactions button at the bottom of the page. So if you hover over your Zoom window, it's going to open up your little toolbar at the bottom of the page, and there's a reactions button. It has a smiley face on it. Click that and then click raise your hand if you have a question, a comment, a win, or a success story. We still do winner of the week and idea of the week. So if somebody has an idea, something that's made you successful that you think you'd like to share with the group, we do give a reward in the way of discounted leads if you're the winner of the week with a success story of the week or an idea of the week. Okay. Otherwise, we're here to answer your questions. We're here to brainstorm with you on ways that you can generate more business in the probate space. But we really want to help with your whole business. So pop your hand up and ask those questions. Before we go to any questions, Chuck, do you have anything you'd like to share for the week?
Not really. I've had a number of monthly strategy coaching calls, and it's really been dialed in on, okay, how do I haven't really done anything with my specific leads, and it's been a number of months. How do I get restarted? Well, when you've taken a bit of time and you haven't specifically forward with your leads, a lot of the same principles of getting up and running go back to the basics. You want to start at filtering your leads. And I think if you go back, maybe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, where we talked about how to go through and look at each of the probate cases and identify first your out-of-state personal representatives, and being aware of what surviving spouses would be. But it's filtering, scrubbing your list, launching your direct mail campaigns, getting on the phones, and building in that routine for you to be doing this consistently. Because with the consistent action, that will move you forward. My wife, she showed me a TikTok video this week that was of a person that was saying, the cure to everything is action. Now, we're here to help you make sure that you make the right choices on what actions to take. And But if you were to, just spend time learning, let's look at that as your right foot, right? And you constantly step forward with your right foot, but your left foot never moves. What happens? You're just going to spin in a circle. But if you're learning and your action is your left foot, and you're learning and you do things, and you're learning and you do things, and those are right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, you're going to move forward. And that's such a key in being able to do this. You will learn a ton by taking action and implementing the direct mail campaigns, making the calls, and having the conversations. You have to be aware of those conversations that you're having with personal representatives, because maybe you need to tweak your approach that you built by going through the dialogue class in Probate Foundations. Maybe you need to tweak it specific to the folks that are in your specific market. That's a really key aspect, is you've got to adapt to the people that you're speaking to. Well, with the training that we're giving you is a foundation, is the baseline for you to be able to be effective in your conversations. But if you're not doing it, you're not going to be, and you keep saying, well, I need to learn more, I need to learn more, I need to learn more, you're just going to spin in a circle. So make sure that you do take that consideration of stepping forward.
So Chuck, really great point, guys. And I want you to pay close attention to what Chuck just said. I'm going to kind of tell you guys a story. If you've been in foundations before, you may have heard this story, but for my early career in the real estate industry, as a listing agent or as a real estate agent, I got linked up with a broker that turned into a business partner of mine, and we ended up having a very successful business. But in the early days, I was piggybacking on a lot of his business, and I was piggybacking by learning. And for an entire year, I ran through a learning experience where I would go on all of the listing appointments with this individual broker at the time. Okay. Every single listing appointment that he'd go on, I'd go on with him. And there were at least minimum of 50 new listings that he had taken over that year that I was always on the listing appointment. And so he'd make a promise, and I'd usually be the one that would kind of fulfill the promise. I'd set the listing up. I was kind of almost like a listing assistant, all while absorbing like a sponge what he was doing in those listing appointments. And virtually every single appointment that he'd go on, he'd follow a very specific routine and process for converting that listing into, or that lead into an actual listing. And most of these folks were not sphere of influence for him. For the most part, about 80 to 90% of those listing appointments were people that didn't know either one of us at all. They knew us maybe from some advertising and marketing, and he got almost all of them. And I watched over that year, and over those 50-ish listings and maybe 60 listing appointments, I watched the process that he would take, and I soaked it all in and I absorbed it, just like I'm seeing a lot of you guys do on these mastermind calls and the foundations classes and the DNA classes. You guys are coming to those classes and you're absorbing. So finally, it came time for me to fly the coop, or fly the nest. And I jumped out of the nest on my very own listing appointment, and I did everything exactly the same way that he did. Everything. I went through the entire process the way that he did, and it worked. It worked for him. It did not work for me on that first try. I got to the end of the listing appointment, and the person that I was sitting across from said, "I think we'd like to ask you to leave. I think we'd like to ask you to leave." Now, I had done everything exactly to the T the way that he did it successfully up to that point. But I learned because I jumped out of the nest and I went on my own listing appointment and I tried it. So I'm going to tell those of you that get plugged into these and you learn and you listen to our podcasts and you come to the classes and you come to the trainings and you jump on the coaching calls, but you're just trying to perfect the process before you do it on your own, that nothing will perfect your specific process like doing. Nothing. So we can teach you the process, but if you're not doing, you're still going to screw it up a couple of times in those early days. And if you're going to screw up, whether you come to the classes or not, you might as well just get out there and learn by doing. And then continue to come to the trainings, the coachings, and the classes and the podcasts that we offer. But go do. Because even if we teach you the perfect process, you've still got to figure certain things out for yourself. You still have to get popped in the mouth when you call a prospect and they say, I don't know why you're calling me right now. Don't call me again. And then you say, okay, how could I have handled that differently? And you learn, and over time you perfect it because you're educating yourself with us and you're doing, and you're letting real life experience teach you. So I'm going to just parrot what Chuck was saying is go do. If you're not doing because you're scared that you're going to mess up, you're not going to learn. The only way and the best way to learn is to go do. And if you mess up, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well,
no
that's
big deal.
part. Yeah, the mess up is part of the learning.
Yep. Absolutely.
Now, just to continue with that, a lot of the questions that we'll get in orientation or brand new people that are subscribing, and they're like, I'm not getting, listings. We need listings. I'm coming to probate because there's going to be listings there, and it's a fact of nature. People are going to die. They're going to have assets that estates are going to need to liquidate. So yes, this is a guaranteed niche for listings. Now, we've also said on the mastermind calls where it's 4 to 6 months for consistent action to then establish consistent closings. Yes, there is a component to this that you have time for a lot of the personal property, get things ready, get family dynamics all squared away for people to be ready to, okay, let's put the sign in the yard, we're ready. If you're sitting and you're learning for the first 6 months because you want to get that process nailed down, you are sitting on the sideline watching the runway. So there's still going to be, just as Bruce just said, there's still going to be that, oh, okay, let me get my sea legs. Let me figure out how this is actually going to work and make those adaptations so your unique person and process and how you handle people is going to be something that is going to attract business. And then you start that timeline for getting things ready to go. I mean, there's a considerable nurture process to once you do make contact and you start building that relationship that is going to take a bit of time. So you might as well start doing something right out of the gate and start that clock, start walking down the runway to where you can take off and begin having consistent listings, consistent purchase contracts, because you're having the right conversations.
Yep. Perfect. All right, guys. So I want to throw it to Jim for a quick comment and then Tim, but we are looking for our first questions, our first successes. If you want to ask a question, you want to share a victory or an idea that has gotten you business that would benefit the rest of the group, please go to the bottom and click the reactions button on the Zoom window and then raise your hand. We'll call on you. So I see we've got Chris with his hand up. We do have plenty of room for more. Before we go to Chris, I want to throw it to Jim and Tim. They had a couple of really quick comments, and then we'll take our questions.
Absolutely. You got to hear a war story from each of us that sold for so many years. Just to kind of reinforce what both Chuck and Bruce said. Chuck said, know your audience. And Bruce said, get out there and start doing it. Many years ago, when I first started prospecting, I had a lot of the 55 and over communities in my market, and I just wasn't doing very well with them. I seemed to be much better at prospecting other markets. And finally, one guy said to me one day, slow down and stop yelling at me. I tend to talk very fast and very loud. And it never occurred to me that's why these people were hanging up on me. I thought they just were hard of hearing or something. So that's just a good example. And after that, I studied a little bit of NLP, trying to match and mirror and copy my audience and all this. It wasn't very long before I was getting the same results with that neighborhood as with with the other communities that didn't have so many seniors. So I just want to reinforce both of what you said in a personal experience. And I think, Tim, you are next.
So you learn to speak slower and not as loud. Is that what you said?
When I'm talking to older people, that's why I speak that way to you, Tim.
I was trying to figure out if you pointed out that you learned that or not.
I did, Tim. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Tim. The only thing I
You're
was going to say is that just a couple of quick points. These are more procedural, and I kind of hate to interrupt the flow. And I know we got a question coming, but I want to talk a little bit about the things that we do kind of behind the scenes. As you know, we rolled pre-probate out a month or two ago, and as everything that we do, we constantly spend time doing everything we can to make sure every week that we get better. And as a part of that, we have, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but every time we process leads, we run them through multiple steps. We have all kinds of different feeds that we run them through and work them against, and data we run them against, and we pull skip trace, and we run do not calls, and all the other questions that we look at, and we run them through 30 plus different steps. So in regard to pre-probate, we've basically replaced the supply side on multiple aspects of that process since we started. And we feel like as we've gone on, some of it based on feedback from you guys and some of it feedback from, just the system itself, we've really certainly improved that even since we brought the product out. So if you haven't tried it yet, I urge you to do that. The quality is continuing to improve, and it will continue to improve. But along with that, even since the very beginning, we've already gotten several quick success stories where, particularly on the investor side, they were in fact able to find low-hanging fruit, make an offer that was accepted, and kind of get moving more quickly on those kinds of properties. And so it's very helpful, and we designed it to be a great product for the investor side. So be aware that the pre-probate product is there, available for you in virtually any county in the country, and we'll be delighted to work with you on that. We've got all the supporting pieces to go with that. Just a word about divorce. We have rolled it out. I'd say we covered about half of the existing counties that were able to get it in quickly. And we expect probably by the end of this week, we'll have the balance of them covered. And we've had a number of you go in and fill out the form online at alltheleads.com/divorce. It's myalltheleads.com, my.alltheleads.com/divorce. Fill out the interest form, and then when your county becomes available, we'll let you know. So urge you to do that, but it's a great opportunity because in a divorce, there are two people that are affected, potentially two relocations that will be involved in that. And the value of the leads that we furnish you is that they're not done on decree, they're done on filing. So that's what you're finding out there. And along the way, you have the opportunity to build a long relationship. So those are the things I had to say. I just want you to know that we always consistently improve what we're doing, and we do it every week. So keep that in mind. And with that, let's take some questions.
I think we've got Chris coming up first. Chris, if you'd unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the open forum here. The masterminds are actually very helpful, especially for those of us like me who just started like 3 days ago. So this is the first time I am being exposed to any of the probate stuff, other than when clients in our brokerage have come up and said, hey, this is kind of what's going on. So it's kind of the other side of it. But I guess getting to it, the first question that I had is, I started the leads got dumped into the system for the first time, I think yesterday. And so today I was looking through them and didn't have a clue what I was looking at, but I started making phone calls because, well, pick me up because the phone makes money. So let's just start and start getting people to tell you no. So I reached out to a couple attorneys and they didn't seem to know a whole lot. And then I waiting on a couple phone calls, and then I reached out to a couple personal representatives because I wasn't really getting anywhere with attorneys, and I don't like being told no. So let's keep trying, right? So from you guys' experience, is it better to try to form a relationship with an attorney or a personal representative? Because my thought is the personal representative might help me lock down this one deal so we can present all the options that a full service brokerage like us can offer. But it's only kind of that one house or that one family situation. Whereas I'm kind of thinking it might be better to form a relationship with the attorney's office because that's more of a partnership, and then, relationships beget more relationships. So what is you guys' thoughts on that?
Your first priority is going to be to get into the conversation with the personal representative. Ultimately, they are going to be the one that is going to be signing, the listing agreement on behalf of the estate. So definitely prospecting personal representatives first is of utmost importance. Now, concurrent with that, or second priority, is going to be building those relationships out and establishing that network of estate planning, elder law, and ultimately probate attorneys that are actually processing the cases through your local courthouse. That is going to be a very close second, but you don't want to go to the attorneys first because, it's sitting down at the kitchen table with that personal representative is how you're going to secure your deals.
I'm going to respectfully, not disagree, but respectfully offer a very small, different angle to it. I would agree. PR's first. So you should be putting an emphasis on calling the personal representatives. A good personal representative relationship and family relationship will lead to amazing things with the attorneys that they're working with. And a lot of times, if you call and you say to the attorney, I am working with our mutual client, so-and-so, could we sit down and have a 15-minute coffee so that I know that I'm not going to do anything that goes against what you're saying? It's going to go a long way, and you're going to get a lot of success. With that said, I've gone directly to attorneys that weren't working with mutual clients of mine and had very, very good success with some of those attorneys. So you should have a campaign for attorneys, whether they're tied to a client or a PR you're working with or not. But as you're building your campaigns out, the first campaign and first system that you should build is going to be the system and campaign that's focused on the PR first. And then once you have that dialed in where you can say, hey, I know that I have my plan to consistently touch this list of PRs for 6 months. And I'm going to do that, and I don't have to iron anything else out. Then shift your focus over to building out that attorney approach. It doesn't matter if you have a PR relationship or not. You're simply there to say, hey, I have an ancillary service that kind of works hand in hand with some of the attorneys in the area. I was wondering if we might be able to take 20 minutes for a conversation or a coffee one day and talk about that and see if it might be of mutual benefit to your business and my business potentially. Okay.
And the thing,
and as far as what you're mentioning about like the campaigns for the attorneys and stuff, is that something that you guys could help us put together and structure wise? Because everything you said sounds great, but I'm like, shit, I don't have a clue what to do.
Yes. The attorney campaign is much more simple. So a good PR campaign is going to involve a website, some online content. So some people choose to do YouTube or some blogs, but you need a couple of different digital pieces to go there so that when they go check you out, you're established and you look credible. It's going to involve multiple letters or postcards. It's going to involve a series of phone calls, whereas the attorney campaign might be a letter and a postcard, and it's definitely focused a little bit more on the phone. So that attorney campaign is more about how often you've decided that you're going to call or reach out and how many times. And
Perfect.
and you don't have to mix in tons and tons of letters. As a matter of fact, I think we might only have one or two attorney letters there. I want most of your attorney campaign to be focused on finding other people who are already in relationship with the attorney, i.e. financial advisors, and getting introduced, or cold calling the attorney and asking for a 10-minute conversation.
And Bruce, the one thing I think that you need to point out with any interaction with an attorney is that before you start that process, you need to have your value proposition clearly in hand. And what I mean by that is you can't go knock on an attorney's door and say, hey, I'm out after probate leads and I'm trying to get it. You want to, turn me on to some of your customers. That's not going to work. That's no value to that attorney at all. You're just, you're wasting the attorney's time doing that. You've got to have a reason that you're valuable to that attorney. What are you going to do that's going to make that attorney's life better? And think about what that attorney is trying to do. In most cases, their biggest issue, and always, is the same thing. They have one commodity, which is time. It's what they bill for. So anything that you can do to help them be more expeditious and get stuff done faster, particularly in regard to probate, is that the sooner they get this probate closed, the sooner they're likely to make sure they get whatever their end payoff is for this. They'll take care of making sure that they do their hourly billing, but you need to talk about the things that you can help with, the things that you expedite, how you move families to make decisions that they would not normally be able to make without some help and mediation, and the value that you bring to that process. So when you get ready to go talk to an attorney, make sure that you've got a reason that they should want to talk to you, not just because you want to talk to them. And I think that's an important thing. And it's one of the things that Bruce will certainly cover in great depth in regard to the foundations classes and the rest of this. But you can't just take the same approach with an attorney and say, hey, I'm Billy Bob and I'm a cool guy and I've got, probate knowledge here. You got to explain what value you bring to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris, an add-on to what both of them said, just like Chuck said, if you've got a bunch of probate leads, take your list and call the absentee owners first. You're going to have a lot of attorney leads. You can sort your list and see who the players are. You can sort your list. I'll bet out of 100 leads, there's 4, 5, 6 attorneys that are doing most of them. Focus on them first. And I know Bruce has Bruce would say call them all, because the big guys might be harder to get in to see. The little guys, may need your help more. But I would start with the ones that are doing multiple deals every month, because they're going to give you the biggest return. And one other thing that to add on to what Tim said, I know we have had agents in the past have success by basically their approach with the attorney is, I'm getting 100 leads a month. I'm noticing about 20% of them don't have an attorney. And I was wondering, would you mind if I referred some of those people to you? And maybe if you have somebody call that needs a good realtor, you refer them to me. Like a quid pro quo is a really good way to get your foot in the door with the attorneys.
Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. We've got a handful of hands that are raised. I'm going to go to Chris Ryan and then Roger and Eddie. I've got a couple of chat questions to answer after Chris Ryan before we come to you guys, but we'll get to you all here very shortly. Chris?
Hey, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. Yeah, just a couple of things. Actually, when Jim had mentioned about, his, talking loud, it really, made me think is that you do have to have empathy and sympathy, when you're making these calls. And it's not about the, because Jim knows I was a coach with Mike Ferry, and we're, a lot of it, hey, it's, standing up upbeat. But sometimes when you're doing probate, it's like, take a seat, keep, get your emotions, get that energy down a little bit, because you don't know who's on the other end. So that was a good point. That's one thing. Smile, have fun with this, because, it is fun. You're like, when, shit, this sounds crazy, but when I get these leads from all the leads, I'm like excited. I stop everything and I just start calling these leads, because it's a game, right? It's a game. It's like, what can you get out of it, right? Who's ready to sell? So I think it's, and I really appreciate, the leads that you guys give us. So it's awesome. But here's one thing that I wanted to add is that interesting things of the last couple of weeks, a lot of people have been asking, like, and you know, it's always been asked, like, how are you getting my numbers? You know, how did you get my number? And quite frankly, a lot of times I'm not going to say it's all the leads and, you know, put your you know, your phone number out there. But I basically say, listen, here's what happens. That, you know, there's companies all over the country that provide these leads. So that's why you're getting it. So people, when you're upfront with them, you're not going to give them the exact information, but when you're upfront with them, you'll get more out of them. I had one yesterday, and the guy's like, you're the first person that actually told me, you know, how it works. I don't tell them exactly, but you're the first person that's been upfront, and quite frankly, you know, I told you I sold this property already, but I have another one coming up because you're the first person. The other, well, you know, one other thought is that I don't know if everybody uses ISAs out there, but one of the things that I've seen too is that it's local. I'm a local agent. A lot of these people that are calling you right now, they could be from overseas, right? You get all these texts. They're from, you know, who knows where they come from. I actually just call you because I want to introduce myself. So I think it's, you know, make sure that you tell people that you're local because they're getting calls from all over the country. So, you know, are all parts of the world. So I think it's like, you know, if you use an ISA, you can have, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use it by any means, but if you're doing it yourself, you should tell them local. I'm a local agent. Some agents aren't. So anyhow, that's a couple points that I just wanted to bring to the table today.
Incredibly good point from Chris, guys. Calling and saying, "Hey, I'm local," it goes a long way. It goes a long way. Another thing that I really liked from Chris is treating it like a game. Okay, we're not here to necessarily force someone into a sale that they're not ready for, but if you can set these calls up and treat it like a game. Okay, here's my objective. My objective is maybe not an appointment, maybe it is. Maybe my objective is to get this person to proactively, but to conversationally answer 3 really good questions of mine. And if I can get them to answer 3 really good questions of mine, or if I can keep them on the phone for 5 minutes, I'm going to consider it a win, whether I get in that door right away or not. Okay. And I'm just giving you guys some examples here. And it's something that I really loved doing when I was prospecting is I would thoroughly enjoy asking binary questions, which is a skill. And you guys know that I talk about binary questions or conversation hooks all the time. I like asking them because if you come out and you say, "Hey, what can I help you with?" They might say nothing. They might say, "How do you get my number?" They might say nothing. And my attorney's got it all handled. They could say any number of things. But if you come out and say, "Are you early in the probate process, or have you been going through this for a while?" Now, all of a sudden, you're in total control of the 2 different answers that they could give you. And I want to encourage you guys to come up with some questions like this that give you control and keep them from dictating the flow of that conversation. And that is when your prospecting gets fun. Prospecting is not that fun when you know that you're going to get hit in the mouth. You just don't know if it's going to be the left hand, the right hand, or a foot that kicks you. Okay. So be in control and recognize that they're not all going to say yes. And they're not all going to say, "Hey, please come out and list my house," or "Please come out and buy my house." And it's okay. If your objective in the game that you play that Chris was referring to is to have a certain length of conversation or to get a certain number of questions answered, it starts to get really fun. Okay. So thanks, Chris.
Yep. And to add on to that, I think, you know, I mean, you know, the stand up, smile and dial, right? I mean, what you talked about with the energy, you still want to have an energy from a perspective that you're leading with a helping hand. So you've got to get yourself into that zone. And I think I've mentioned it before in a lot of my coaching calls when we're talking about cold prospecting is to really say, all right, if you're getting started and you have that call reluctance, it's okay, who am I going to disappoint today if I don't pick up the phone and call them because they're stressing out over needing to settle the estate and their family's not helping and they're stressed out. we're robbing them of the opportunity for the help and the resources that they desperately need. So use that as some level of inspiration to pick up the phone and start dialing, because there's people out there that need your help. And if you can channel that and you have that intention, your energy through the phone is going to be completely different, and it's going to be on the right tone for having the conversations with personal representatives that might be dealing with a generally ugly situation that they're stressed out about.
Awesome. All right. Hey, before we're going to go Roger, Eddie, and then Paul. Before I do that, I've got a couple of questions that we want to read out and answer for some of the folks that have chatted in their questions. So first up is going to be from Shelly. Shelly actually has two questions. So what should I say when there's no real estate in the estate and the PR says that the attorney or the paralegal is dropping the ball and costing a lot of money that she doesn't have? Okay, good question. That happens a lot. And I'm gonna lead by telling you guys, be helpful. You are there to provide value to someone. Whether there's real estate that needs to be sold out of the estate or not, there's really no justification not to help someone. If you are in it for yourself and for no one else, you're not going to last very long in this business. So you run into someone that says, hey, I don't have real estate in the estate. My attorney's costing me a lot of money. They're taking too much time. Hey, would it be helpful to you if I connected you with one of my attorneys? Okay, that as simple as that. Would it be helpful to you if I connected you with one of my attorneys to see if there's something that they might be able to do different for you than the attorney that you're working with now? Okay, it's as easy as that. It doesn't take a whole lot of time or energy out of your life. You've helped someone, and hopefully they think about potentially repaying the favor if they buy or sell another property down the road in the future. So being able to offer value and becoming that linchpin in your community, and that linchpin that connects the families that you're serving with all sorts of different providers and vendors goes a long way toward ultimately getting you what you're looking for.
Hey, Bruce.
Yep, go ahead.
The one thing I was going to also ask is that, they said there's no real estate in it, but somehow the paralegals are costing the client a lot of money. One of the questions I'd ask is, well, I get that there's no real estate in it. What are the assets in the estate, so that what's potentially the holdup? The reason I'm saying that is that we often find, and this is back to providing value, there is something else of value in the estate. It could be antiques, it could be collectibles, it could be whatever because if she thinks that paralegals are costing her a lot of money, there's something there to protect. The value that you bring to the game there is that as you get better at your craft, you'll learn all the different places for different people who potentially will acquire assets like that. You'll learn who buys collectibles in your local marketplace. You'll learn who buys automobiles that are not just trade in at the dealer, but maybe have some classic car value. You'll learn all those kinds of people. In any aspect of your business, as you get better, you need to ask that next question, which is exactly what is it that's in the estate that you're worried about protecting? Because that's a missed opportunity if you don't do that. And that is something also that you can talk to your attorney about if indeed they said, well, it might be great to do that. The more you learn, the better you're giving it and putting on a silver platter for your attorney to talk to them.
Yep. Perfect. Guys, conversations are kind of like opening a can up. And not a can of whoop ass, sorry. It's like opening a can up. I think I got like 1 or 2 laughs there, so I'm here all week. As you start to pry open that can and you turn it upside down, but you're really having a hard time and you just have a little seam, you're gonna get a little tiny bit of feedback from the individuals. And if they're not giving you open, longer-winded responses, if they're being reserved, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. Your objective and your mission is to pull more and more information and conversation out of the prospect. And not everyone just immediately starts gushing information and conversation at you. you have to massage that a little bit. So to Shelly's question, I immediately gave the answer, but sometimes you don't want to immediately come out and say, oh, well, let me tell you what the answer is. You want to pry, you want to uncover information. So before giving the answer that Tim or I gave, and I think Tim did a better job of opening it up with questions, is ask those questions. And if you don't know the concept of a pain funnel, I want you guys to go Google it, look up pain funnel, and learn some questions that you can ask to dig out and uncover some of that pain. Why do they say that about their attorney? What are some of the areas that is costing you money? What's been the biggest hassle? So you want to start uncovering these. And oftentimes, if you can get these questions answered, you extended the conversation, people start to open up more, and then you've earned the right to be able to present the solution after you've inquired and you've been truly curious at uncovering what some of those pain points are. So Shelly, ask questions before you just dive into a response like I gave. And then Shelly did have a follow-up question. And what do you say when the PR says the attorney's handling everything? I absolutely love that question or that statement. I love the statement that I get when someone says, hey, we have it all handled. Those are two of my favorites. And if you don't know why, join Foundations class next month, and I'll tell you exactly why. But there's a very, very, very simple formula to follow when someone says that they have everything handled, or their attorney's handling it, or they give you any rejection or resistance at all. And that formula is as simple as this. You validate them. Number one, hey, I completely get it. It's as easy as that. I get it. I understand. Okay. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to do what Chris Voss calls labeling. I've always called it reframing. You want to take whatever it is that they've given you and practice the active listening that some of us have learned in marriage counseling. And you actively repeat back what the person has said in a little bit of a different, with a small twist on it. So our attorney's handling everything. Oh, I completely understand. It sounds like you have a great attorney. Or it sounds like your attorney's kind of doing the whole thing for you. Okay. So labeling is basically, and there's lots of different ways to do this, but to simplify it, it sounds like statement. So you want to take what they've said, agree with it. I completely understand. I agree. I get it. And then say, it sounds like blank. Fill in the blank, kind of repeating back what they've told you with a little spin on it. So we have everything handled. It sounds like you probably weren't looking for outside help today. All right. So we put a spin on it so that we can appropriately deal with what it is that they've said. And we're not dealing with it by saying the word, but you're wrong, or we're not dealing with it by trying to correct and educate them. We're dealing with it first by trying to make them feel understood and heard and appreciated. And then we can move on to a different topic of the conversation after that, because you're going to build rapport by doing that. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add before I move to the next written question, and then we'll go to Roger?
I would just add one other thing, and that is that if you're going to get out of that conversation at that point, one of the questions that you might ask also is that, okay, that's great, and do exactly what Bruce said, validate that, and do the dance that says, yep, I get it, you got an attorney, and then say to them something to the effect of, well, is your attorney the person that I should be speaking with in regard to my buyer who's interested in the property? If in fact there's property there and you know that it's there, you're opening that avenue of approach. And if you can get some interest there, just say, that's great. I'm not going to argue with you. That's super. Is your attorney the person I ought to be speaking about? Here's what I want to talk to them about. Mm-hmm. And now you've got their interest a little bit. Well, what do you mean you got a buyer? You got to be prepared to have the conversation, but you're looking to try to continue that conversation and get past it. The other part of it is that you've got the change of base, which is, well, I assume your attorney's taking care of making sure that, if there's nobody living in it, you may have changed the insurance to cover non-resident insurance and all that. That's been done, right? Just throw it off like that. What are you talking about? A lot of ways to answer that question, but make sure that you're doing a little bit more to try to extend that conversation along a little bit. And Bruce will certainly teach you more about that in Foundations.
Awesome. It's a good question, Tim. I'm surprised. All right.
Oh, that was not nice.
No, great question, Tim. Great question. All right. So Darrett, what's a normal approach to contacting pre-probate leads, being that it's pretty early? Okay, so the approach with pre-probate leads, you've got two different options. And you could really open up with either one of these options. You could pretend that you have no idea they're going through pre-probate and treat it like a geographic farming or circle prospecting call. I'm calling about 123 Main Street. Or you could go to Chris Ryan's approach a little bit ago and just be honest. I was giving you a call. I'm not sure if you're the John Smith that was related to Mr. Smith. Are you involved with that estate at all? I was giving you a call because I noticed that there was an estate and that there was real estate in it. Okay, so you might just go very direct into that conversation. So everyone's going to handle it a little bit differently. I will tell you that if somebody is going through pre-probate, sometimes that you don't pass the sniff test if you try to pretend like you didn't know. Occasionally, if they suspect that you're being disingenuous by just calling about 123 Main Street when it was their family member that lived there and not them, you've immediately lost credibility if you're not upfront and honest about why you're calling and that you know that they or that you suspect that they might be associated with an estate. Okay. Open it up to my other coaches. Anybody, you guys have anything to add to that?
I think it comes down to, I mean, there's two key ways that we're going to reach out to folks. We're going to pick up the phone. That's going to be the fastest, direct way to initiate that conversation. The other way is, definitely you want to reach out with a direct mail piece and get something into their mailbox so they've got a physical message that they can read and digest on their time and make the decision to reach out and call you to see how you can help them.
Yep. All right. Awesome. Okay, so Roger, Lacey, thank you for waiting so patiently. What do you got for us?
People like to say yes because they feel good with yes. They don't really like saying no. I learned a long time ago in my previous incarnation as a Southwestern Bell Yellow Page agent not to ask the question, do you understand me? It was a sell down every time I tried to sell a half-page ad, and I walked away with a little quarter-column ad by asking during the informational part of my presentation, educational part of the value of Yellow Pages, that this is how it works. This is, you get more phone calls with big ads and smaller ads. So I walked back into my sales manager's office after selling a small ad to a plumber. And he called me into his office and he said, did you just call on this plumber? I said, yes, I did. He said, how did that go? And I said, well, I got a quarter column out of it instead of a half-page ad. And he said, let me ask you something. What kind of questions did you ask? And I sit there and I looked at him and I said, well, I asked him if he asked him if he understood what I was saying. He said, that's the problem, Roger. And I just sit there and I went, what's the problem with that? He said, you're not taking responsibility of the words that come out of your mouth. And I just sit there and I went, I don't understand what you're saying. And he said, exactly. You should try to change that and take responsibility by the language that you asking for clarification. Did I explain this correctly? And I went, what? And he said, try that the next time. In fact, try it right now with me. Okay. Did I explain this correctly? Did I say this correctly? And he sat there and he said, you're getting there, you're getting there, you're getting there. What happens when they say yes? I sit there and I go, well, I can move on to the next point. And he said, you've also taken him, and you've got the chin boogie started with the conversation by asking a really good question instead of making them responsible for understanding what you say. Take responsibility for how you explain it and dumb it down or bring it up, either way, depending upon the person that you're involved with. So what I learned at that point was I got, like Chris said earlier in the call today, instead of getting thrown out of the office, being told to get out of here by saying, don't you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Did I explain it correctly? Is a much better way of approaching that. And you'll get the old chin boogie started on that. Yes, you did. So I think you've probably covered that in some way or other, Bruce, but that was a bloody nose that I got. One other thing that was discussed earlier on today is how to approach attorneys. I only approach the attorneys I don't try to approach the attorneys when I get it on my list. I call the PR. If I can establish a relationship with the PR on the front end, I know what the probate process is, and I'm building a checklist of things that haven't been done that the attorney probably needs to have done, whether it's a CMA, BPO, whether it's an inventory list of the personal property, whether it's some other documentation that the attorney needs. I'm finding out what he doesn't have, what the attorney doesn't have, and all of a sudden it becomes a very valuable visit with the attorney, and I've made an impression on the attorney that I know what I'm doing, and all of a sudden let's do that. And I try to I make sure that my PR understands that I understand that anytime that I talk to his attorney, it's going on the hourly billing that the attorney's making. So I want to make that visit with the attorney. I want to impress him that I'm aware of the probate process. I talked to your client, who is also my client, and this is where we are. We do have a signed listing agreement because I'm going to make sure that that's all taken care of at that first visit, if I possibly can. And I understand the court is going to need these documents that I can provide for you, and it's already done. Making the visit with the attorney very short, and all he's doing is he's just taking stuff that I'm giving him, and he's just looking at it. And I want him to walk away from him and says, when can we sit down and have another discussion? Do you have anything that you need from me to do to help you get this done? And all of a sudden I become an ally, and they remember that. You come in with solutions that they didn't have. You know what the process is, and you're able to move on and make two friends out of that result by asking yourself, did I explain this? How can I help you with your next step? So
Roger, that's so good. I got several years ago, I got a $3.5 million land development deal from an attorney that was a probate attorney, all because I was working with a client that was a mutual client. And I called her and I said, I know how busy you are. What can I get for you from the client that you're having a hard time getting? And I can bring it to your office, make your life easier. And she loved it so much, she started to become a referral partner of mine. And I ended up culminating that relationship with a $3.5 million land development deal. All because instead of saying, let me pitch my service to you, it was, what can I get you from our mutual client that you are kind of too busy to try to deal with right now? How can I make your life easy? So that what Roger said is so good, guys. So good. All right. So if everyone's noticing my voice, I did go to a hockey playoff game last night, and I am a little bit hoarse and a little bit deaf. So my voice is starting to crack up. I'm gonna lean on some folks to help out. But let's jump over to Eddie really quickly. Eddie, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm driving, so I I was stopped, but I had to go. Anyway, I don't baffled. There's a guy that I'm helping, I guess, and I can't get him to sign a listing agreement to save my life. He has a house that's probably worth maybe 300,000. It's completely full of stuff, not trash. It's full of stuff that's probably worth value, and somebody could give him money. So I brought him in, my estate guy, to do. It's going to be like a 4-day estate sale. Well, actually, it's going to be like a 2.5-week estate sale, because it's going to be 2 weeks online, and then there'll be like a local one that people can go through as well. But now I'm like, look, have I provided you value in this process? And he's like, yeah, you have. Like, this has been really big because nobody else could do this. And I was like, so, what's your hesitation on signing a listing agreement with me? He's like, well, if I'm going to list the house, I'm going to sell it with you. And I'm like, okay, well then can we get that on paper? And he's like, no, well, I might not sell it. And I was like, well, if you don't sell it, then nothing happens, But I don't know where I messed up. I mean, I do know where I messed up. I should have had him sign a listing agreement before, but I didn't provide any value yet. So curious on people's take. And then I have something after this to tell you after.
You're tripping him. I'm going to answer that question really quickly for the sake of time. And Paul's had his hand up for a while. So I think that you're tripping him into the zone of resistance with your desire to get a listing agreement signed. The more you go after it, the more he's putting up resistance. So a really simple question is what do you think our next step should be? Here are my 3, 4, 5 options. 5's too many, by the way. So here are my 2 to 4 options that that most of my clients typically choose from. Which one of these do you think would work best for you if you sold? Get a commitment to a set of options that are an option that he would, if he sold, would be best for him. And it comes with a price tag. And then say, what do you think the next step should be? And get him to self-select or or opt in to what he'd like to do. And sometimes he's going to decide not to list, in which case I would probably make one of my 3 or 4 options a estate sale and probate management only, with maybe a discount on the back end if he decides to list and sell the house. Something like that. I've never done this, so I'm just kind of trying to think out of the box. But immediately right now, Eddie, and I see agents, specifically real estate agents, make this mistake all the time. They go pushing so hard for buyer agency agreements and listing agreements, and they push people right out of business with them because that person's like, why are you pushing me so hard? And the second that they feel that commission breath or they smell that commission breath coming off, they're like, I'm done, I'm out, lay off. What are you trying to do here? All right. So I would take a softer approach, give him options and find out if you sold, which one of these options do you think would work better for you? Okay. Maybe have one that is not a listing option. And then ask him, what do you think the next step is? I learned how to do this many years ago because anytime I'd present or pitch anything to my dad, he'd say no. But if I knew how to make him think it was his idea. Okay. So if he thought it was his idea, I got what I wanted. So that's what you need to do is figure out how to make this guy feel like it's his idea.
The other thing, Bruce, that I'd say is you're missing another opportunity in regard to that conversation. He told you that he's saying he's not sure he wants to sell. Now, that's an interesting point. He's clearing the house out. He's doing the things that would seem to indicate he's probably heading in that direction. I would ask, take a few minutes of his time and say, let's sit down and talk about what your objectives might be. And what are your decision points in regard to selling it or not selling it? I may have some valuable input for you there based on what the market's doing and what you might expect and how long it might take and all that. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? And don't put the pressure on it. Just say, let me give you some facts. I'm here to help you. I'm not trying to push you for anything. Let's make a wise decision. Let me help you with info. Give it away. Keep giving it.
Yep. Perfect. Perfect. All right, Eddie, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, as I've told you guys on this before, I'm really working on making this a sellable business. That's my ultimate goal, is to make this a sellable business. Not, here's a job that I have, and when I want to retire or stop doing it, then it's done. So on Tuesday next week, I'm going to be interviewed on the local news station about my company. So had to pull some strings to get it, but
Yep.
I got tired of people saying, I wish I knew of you 6 months ago. And so I was like, this seems like a way to let people know that I exist more. So if other people can make some phone calls and get on their news station and tell them their unique proposition, not just a real estate agent, they might be able to get an interview done.
Good. Great. Thank you.
Make sure you ask the TV station for an original copy of the story if you can get it. That way you've got stuff to put online when you're being interviewed, and you'll get it in first generation data. That way you can put it online at very high resolution and look more professional when you cut it into your online advertising and all the other things you should be doing to take good advantage of that interview.
Outstanding. Good. Well, guys, Paul has had his hand up this whole time. Apologize, Paul, for leaving you hanging for so long, and we are a little bit over time. Paul, what do you have for us? And that's going to wrap us up for the
Sure,
day.
thank you. Really quick question. I just started making my calls this week, and out of the 100 leads, I've been just calling the personal rep, the number that's associated with the PR. And the contact ratio is pretty low from what I'm normally getting. So I'm getting 5 out of 100 contacts, live contacts.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's
normally I get 10 out of 100 when I'm, calling neighborhoods. So my question is, do I call the other people that's also listed? And if so, what am I saying to them?
So I learned this the other day. I recognized something, and I'm going to try to make it quick, but I recognized my conversation pattern when I was calling someone that I was not prospecting. So I was driving behind someone on the road last Saturday, and a wallet flew off of the top of their car on the interstate. And it was like a cash bomb exploded. I saw the thing hit the ground, and I saw cards and cash just balloon everywhere. And I could see the vehicle up ahead of me, and I knew my wife was about a minute behind. And so the first thing I thought is, we're going to be rich. I'll just call her and tell her to get all the cash. And the second thing I thought is, I bet you that's someone's entire life. So I called her. I said, I'm on the interstate. Here's where I am. Pull over here. See if you can figure out whose wallet this is. And she did. There was an ID in it, tons of cash, a bunch of stuff, but there was no contact information for the person. So I went and skip traced the name and found a dozen people with that name in my area. And instead of calling with my normal prospecting approach, because I wasn't prospecting, whoever answered, I'd begin to say, look, I have no idea if I have the right phone number. I'm looking for so-and-so. And they'd say yes. And then I'd say, again, there's a bunch of you. I found several people online with your name. I'm not sure if I have the right one. Are you by any chance, do you by any chance live in Raleigh? And did you by any chance lose a wallet? Okay. And immediately, all of a sudden, all the resistance that I get when I prospect for people in probate was gone. I got no resistance, and everyone was like, oh yeah, well, that's my son, or that's me, or no, I'm not in Raleigh. And people were giving me feedback very openly, because I treated it like, hey, I'm not sure if I have the right person. I found your information online, which, by the way, you guys did. Someone brought that up earlier. Is what do we say if they say, how'd you get my information? I found your information online, which you guys do. And I'm not sure if you're the right one. Are you by any chance associated with the estate of John Doe? Okay, yes, no. Sometimes it's going to be a no, by the way, guys, or sometimes it's going to be a yes, that's a distant cousin of mine, but I haven't had any relation with that side. It's perfectly fine. We're gathering information. Do you mind if I quickly tell you what I was calling for? And now you're in the conversation, and you can start to pull information out, and you can start to prospect at that point. But if you treat it like you looked them up, you're not sure if you have the right person. Are you by any chance the John Smith that's related to this John Doe? They're usually going to give you some positive feedback. I found your information online and I didn't know if I had the right person. Okay, and you can do that with the additional heirs all day long without a lot of pushback.
Hey, Bruce, before you cut off, the other thing I was going to say is that we oftentimes forget that the PRs that are in this, think about who those people are. Typically, they're among the most responsible people that the person who passed away knew. That's who got appointed to handle this. Most cases, those are people who are working regular jobs all day long. And if you're calling during the day, you're not going to get them. And so one of the things I'd say to you is make sure that you think about when you're calling these people, and you may need to call them after work, before work, or on the weekends to get them. It's not like calling residential prospecting where, you're willing to talk to whoever you get. If you call and you're calling in regard to a home at 123 Elm, you'll talk to the husband, the wife, or whoever answers the phone. You're specifically looking for that personal representative. So you may want to vary your time of calling, and you'll get better results if you call when the people who are most likely to be PRs are most likely to be at home or available to take that call. If you're calling during the day, you're not going to get them in a lot of cases.
And one thing to consider when you're looking at what available times, guys, don't hesitate to set aside, targeted hours on a Saturday. I mean, that's when you're going to be able to connect with folks and catch them. I've had a number of conversations with agents across the country, and some really target that as their calling session. So I understand that I'm going to coach you for sure. You need to time block, you need to spread out the hours so you can have a life as well as a career, but consider adding in some of the Saturday hours to be able to make better contacts.
Or evening hours. And Sue asked what hours we suggest. We don't suggest the exact same hours every single day of the week. Vary it up so that the person that isn't answering the phone on a Monday morning might answer on a Thursday night. And by the way, Paul, I've had plenty of weeks where I ran 5% answer rate, and then a week or two later it flips to 15%. So it could just be the week.
And so the additional phone numbers, are they the heirs or are they the household of the PR, or both?
Likely the heirs. Occasionally it's the household of the PR, but they are likely heirs.
But they can also be additional contact numbers for either the PR or a number that was associated with that PR. We do a very in-depth skip trace. So we try to find the best possible one and literally do them as they move to the right in your spreadsheet of data. The numbers that are the furthest to the right, least likely to be helpful, but you may find if you can't get them in any of the others, that's what they're there for. I'm trying to reach, Joe Smith in regard to the estate of Billy Bob Johnson. And, that's a way to start that conversation, and you'll be able to find them. But I think the key element there is, my guess is that it's a time issue. You got to make sure that you're calling them at a time it's convenient for them. And if you do call on the weekend, and I know we're pushing time here, start off by saying, hey, I realize it's the weekend and I know you probably had a long week, but I'm actually doing this out of respect for your time, because I know that you've been appointed by my data that you've been appointed the personal representative for XYZ. And if you got a couple of seconds, I'd like to talk to you. You've taken the curse off. You've shown respect for them. You've got a great entree into making that conversation work.
So basically you're saying, go ahead and call the rest of the numbers each time.
I'm saying if you don't get anybody, certainly call them all. Absolutely.
Right. Okay, perfect.
Most of the time I'll call the first number my first time, or maybe 2 times through, but I don't want to go more than a month without trying those additional numbers.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Jim.
All right, I will do the closing. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I want to particularly thank those that actively participated. And we always challenge you, take one thing that inspired you on this call, go out and put it into practice, and please come back next Thursday and share your results with the group. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for being here. See you same time next Thursday. Take care.